All right, let's delve into data types. Now, PowerShell has a variety of types of variables that can be set, and PowerShell is intelligent enough to determine what the type of variable is when the variable is set. So you don't have to think or do anything special when you set the variable. And so far, we've looked at mainly string type variables. We're also going to take a look at integers, floating point variables, and booleans or bools. Now, to demonstrate how easy it is to change the type of a variable, let's work with a variable called var1. I'm going to go ahead and open up PowerShell, and let's set var1 to equal to lions, a string. Now let's set it to be equal to 2, an integer. Now let's set it to be equal to 2.1, which is a floating point. Lastly, let's set var1 to be equal to true, which is a boolean. Now you'll notice that every time we did that, we didn't have to say, hey, I'm changing what var1 is. I'm not saying, hey, var1 is now going to be a boolean or a floating point or an integer. PowerShell is just able to change the values and types kind of behind the scenes. So as I already noted, you've been working with strings quite a bit. And anytime you set the favorite teams variable earlier, you were telling PowerShell that the series of letters inside the double quotes was a string. It's also worth noting that PowerShell can set variables with single quotes and work with string variables the exact same way. So let's just do that just to demonstrate our favorite team variable. And we can use single quotes to make it and you can see that that variable is now changed there as well. Now, integers are whole numbers that can be positive or negative. And floating point variables are frequently used to store decimal values, often stored as double and float types. But I'm not going to get too much into that because this is a function of learning how to code. I just wanted to highlight that, but we don't really need to do it because we're not going to be working with that kind of stuff in our code yet. So we can actually use a function called getType to determine the type of a particular variable. Now, how we would do that is, say for var1, which is a bool right now, we'd say var1 dot get type, and you'll see that it's a boolean. Now, if we go work backwards, and I'll just go up, get my get type again, set it to 2.1. It says that it's a double, so that's what I was talking about with the floating point. It's still a floating point nonetheless. We'll set it back to 2. Let's get the type again. It's an integer, 32-bit integer. And if we just set it back to just good old lines, see that it's a string. So that's about it for variables in the different types, at least for the purpose of this course. But I do want actually to go over one more thing with Booleans, the true or false value. Now, what we'll be able to do later, and we're going to get into this pretty soon, is evaluate things based on whether something is true or false. And we'll actually be able to evaluate variables if they have any kind of value, right? Like we could evaluate, hey, if the team equals lions, then do some action, right? But I just want to show you how that looks. And also too, I wanted to highlight that in terms of the true or in terms of the true or false, what we're kind of really setting in the back end is a 0 or a 1. And that's what a Boolean essentially is. So let's take a look at a variable. Let's call it one game, and we'll set it to equals true. And if we just go back here, we'll see that it's true. This would be a instance, I'm kind of just bringing this up just to kind of be a prelude to possibly using Booleans later on, that you'll be able to set, when we start working with conditionals, we'll see if, we'll be able to say, hey, if one game is true, then update this value to true. And I just wanted to highlight that it's an automatic value. Obviously, when you see true here is the variable, the value it gives back is true, not a $sign true. So I guess that's the bigger point. All right, that about does it for data types. Next, it's time to move on to one of the most critical things with PowerShell, which is objects. So I'll see you in the next lesson.